Well, hello again, everybody. My name's Adam White, and it is time for the August 2024 Government and Legislative Affairs Update. My name is Adam White, and thanks for being here. It's good to go ahead and give you another update. A little bit of things that have been happening since the last time we talked and visited. First, let me say it was great to see several of you at Oshkosh this year. I had a chance to go attend for most of the week, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. Great to see all those airplanes flying all day, every day, the fireworks at night. The Alaska Airmen's Association had our raffle cub there for next year, a legend cub, a MOAC, the mother of all cubs, with leading edge slats and really nice Lycoming engine. So anyway, it was at Oshkosh, and that was the main reason why we were there, because I was not the only person with the Airmen's Association at Oshkosh this year. So we did open up ticket sales for a brief window there for the week of Oshkosh to get a little bit of a head start on that, and it was very successful. Thank you to those that have purchased tickets already. For those of you that wanted to get tickets that didn't have a chance to do that during that window, ticket sales will go on sale again the normal time before the end of the year. So we'll be looking for that to start up again here in a couple months. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about what happened at Oshkosh for me. I was able to go around and visit with a lot of the vendors that come to our show in May, the Great Alaska Aviation Gathering, but be there at Oshkosh to be able to talk with them there, kind of get a mid-year update, a midsummer, I guess end of the summer update from what happened at the beginning of the summer when they were here in Alaska. Great to visit with some of those folks. A lot of them have become good friends through the years, and so it was a great chance just to visit with friends. But had a great opportunity to talk about a lot of the issues that we are dealing with here in Alaska with the Alaska Airmen's Association. So it was a very successful trip. Had a chance to talk with several people within the FAA that work at the headquarters level that were attending Oshkosh. The FAA has their own building there. If you haven't been to Oshkosh, that the FAA has a lot of their program offices have tables there in that building. And I spent a significant amount of time in that pavilion. It was air conditioned, so that was nice, but it was the people that I was able to visit with and talk with that are the policy setting people and the folks that manage and run a lot of the programs that directly affect us here in Alaska. So it was very successful to talk to those folks face to face. A lot of them, actually this happened a couple of times, standing there talking to a person that I've known for a while, and then I hear this voice in the background. And that voice was very familiar, but I'd never actually met that person before, especially since COVID has hit. So much of our meetings have been over Zoom or Teams or some of the other video platforms. But a lot of times it's kind of hard to see and tell who the person is on these cameras, but you recognize people's voices. And those of us that are pilots, we recognize controllers' voices, but I recognize several voices of other FAA personnel in that building while I was talking to other folks. And so was able to stop the conversation and say, I'm sorry, who is that person? Because that voice is very familiar. And it was a great opportunity to visit and talk and catch up and talk about Alaska. I will say that Alaska, of course, we've known this for a long time. Alaska is kind of the gold standard for backcountry aviation, but Alaska also has this allure for pilots and folks involved in aviation because of just the way Alaska is and how integral aviation is to our life here. So a lot of great conversations there with the FAA. Had an opportunity to go around and talk to a lot of folks about the transition away from 100 low lead. That seemed to be the biggest topic of most of the conversations that happened at Oshkosh this year. And I was able to go around and talk to 3 of the 4 candidate fuel programs. I talked to very influential and high-ranking people within those programs there at Oshkosh. Had a great opportunity to talk with them about our concerns here in Alaska, about what this transition is going to mean for us and what it could potentially look like. Our concerns about environmental issues with temperature swings between being close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit all the way down to 40, 50, 60 degrees below zero and still needing to operate. Long-term storage concerns that we have here in the state because Alaska, sometimes we just get fuel once a year and it's got to make it all the way through the next year and then have all those seasonal shifts and changes there in that storage facility. So great opportunity to talk to them, asked a lot of great questions. They did of me about Alaska. I was able to in turn ask a lot of questions that I've had about their candidate fuel and the process that they're going through. I will tell you that everybody I talked with wants to see this transition be successful. Obviously, they're in this to not just be coming up with the fuel, but to actually try to make some money off of it as well. In capitalism, great. But to be able to explain to them what our concerns were beyond just environmental issues and longevity issues, the effects that it has on other parts and components of the fuel system, and those types of things. So again, very productive time at Oshkosh for me to be able to do that. Also went around and talked to some of the big companies that we all use some of their products. Garmin, had a long conversation over a couple of days with the folks at Garmin, and talking about not just their products, but navigation as a whole, and the scope of navigation, and what does that look like for us here in Alaska. Great conversation we had about the legacy nav aids that are going away here in Alaska, and how VORs, we just don't have as many as the lower 48 does, even though they're drawing down in the lower 48. So what does that look like for us? Again, very key personnel there at Oshkosh I was able to have an audience with to talk about these concerns that we have here in Alaska. Talk to folks at ForeFlight, talk to them at length about our desires to be able to get more Alaska specific products into that app, specifically some of the Part 93 procedures and some of these CTAF areas, and how do we show these things on these maps, and how does that look like? And so again, a lot of really good conversations there with them. Talked with ForeFlight about their ADS-B receivers that they have worked with and partnered with. That included Uavonics, and then the folks over at Stratus. Talked with them quite a bit as well about what does it look like for us in Alaska. And we don't have very many ground stations, but yet we're getting more. Matter of fact, there's a few that are going to come online before the end of this year, so be looking for that. And we'll give you more details when those actually go live. But again, being able to explain to the folks that directly impact our life here in Alaska when it comes to aviation, but be able to talk to them face to face at Oshkosh and be able to explain to them why it's important, the things that we say and that we do and that we ask for when we reach out to them as consumers. So besides the heat and humidity there in Wisconsin, it was a great week. I did get a little bit of sunburn. It's starting to finally peel and be done with that. But for a guy who lives in the interior of Alaska, I've been here 30 years almost, and I typically wear short or long sleeves all through the summer, even in the higher temperatures, mainly because of the bugs. So I don't get a lot of sun. And then to get down there to Oshkosh, it was pretty hot, but it was an enjoyable week. It was well worth it. Some of the other things I wanted to talk with you about this month. It was good to actually meet some of you that watch these updates that are not from Alaska. And so that was kind of it's happened before. Matter of fact, there's some running jokes within the office of the Airmen's Association about when I travel, it seems like Seattle is a hotspot for being recognized and conversations about the Alaska Airmen's Association. But that happened at Oshkosh as well. I had several people stop me as I was walking around and wanted to talk because they recognized me from these videos. So again, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. I enjoyed those conversations. I greatly appreciated to get your perspective on what the Alaska Airmen's Association does. Now, some folks here in Alaska may say, I'm glad that those folks are in lower 48 are members too, and I glad they're there, but this is the Alaska Airmen's Association. So let me explain a little bit to you why it's important that folks in the lower 48 are excited about what we're doing. It's very hard for us to gain the critical mass, just being Alaskans and Alaska residents, to be able to enact the change and to get the things that we need to be able to do Alaska aviation safely. So when we have excitement from the outside of the state, when we get people excited about our programs, our activities, what we're able to do legislatively and advocacy-wise, it helps them, but it also helps us, because there's a lot of things that happen in the lower 48 that are 2 or 3, maybe 5, 10 years ahead of what is going to happen here. And so me keeping up with what's going on down there is important, so it helps us get ready for when that comes up here. But it also helps the lower 48. Backcountry aviation has become very, very popular in the lower 48, especially in the western states. And what we do up here and the things that we've been able to do from an advocacy perspective helps them be able to continue to do those things, those same kinds of activities down there in the lower 48. Now, I will tell you that it also helps us an awful lot, because we know that there's more regulations in the lower 48 than there are here in Alaska. Local, counties, municipalities, a lot of different state and national level regulatory issues that are coming into play in the lower 48 when it comes to backcountry aviation. And those of us here in Alaska know that, thankfully, and we're very grateful for this, we still operate without a lot of that oversight. But I can tell you that we have to be sure that we are being proactive to stay ahead of those things, to be able to go to those regulators and explain to them what we're doing and why we do it the way we do it and all those things. And that's why the membership of the lower 48 is very important for what I do. It helps me understand the fights that we are going to have to fight. It helps me become proactive and get ahead of the curve and be able to maybe stop some things before it even becomes an issue. I can't tell you the number of things because I can't remember. It's not that I can't tell you. It's hard for me to remember the number of issues and problems and things that we've been able to stop before they became a problem, that you've never heard about, that you never even knew as an issue, that we were able to quietly take care of behind the scenes. That's the value of your membership. That's why what I do as doing the advocacy stuff here in the Airmen Association gets me so excited about these things, because we're able to do that. We're able to stay ahead of a lot of these issues. Now, there is an issue that's currently underway right now that it's been very difficult to stay ahead of. And matter of fact, I'll be honest, we've gotten behind on, and that's dealing with the upgrades and the improvements at Homer. And it's not that we dropped the ball. There's a lot of moving parts with that particular project. There's the width of the runway is getting narrower because of the scope of this project. There was talk of a parallel taxiway going full length of the runway. That's no longer going to be part of that project for a multitude of reasons. And it comes down to not just because somebody decided they didn't want to do that. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts beyond just somebody's desire to do something. What we have here in Alaska is we've got a very difficult funding situation when it comes to state DOT. So most of our projects are funded in the vast majority, 92 to 93%, sometimes 95% of the project is funded by federal dollars. The state has to match, has to come up with that remaining 7 plus or minus %. So as a result, DOT only goes after projects, and I shouldn't say only, but for the most part goes after projects that the federal government will pay for. The federal government will only pay for certain things, and they will only pay for it to be done certain ways. Those decisions about ways to do things and what thresholds trigger a certain activity and improvement at an airport are primarily based on things that happen in the lower 48. The standards of a critical design aircraft, that's a phrase that we hear all the time in the advocacy world, that determines what type of airport you have. And that's 500 operations a year on a specific type or class or category of aircraft. So if you've got a runway that's 5,000 feet long, but the biggest airplane you have come in there is a 206 coming and bringing the mail, there's no reason to have a 5,000 foot runway. That's the critical design aircraft does not need 5,000 feet and 150 feet wide. So when the feds come back and say, okay, it's time for you to rehabilitate the airport, and DOT's working through that project, the FAA comes back and says, well, we're only going to fund or allow funding to be used on a project for this type of airport. And so that's why it was such a big deal for us to work with our senators and Congressman Peltola and Don Young before that, to work through to get it into the FAA reauthorization bill, that Alaska and other places similarly dealing with the same issue, to not downgrade the airport based off of standards and criteria and critical design parameters that were primarily set up for the lower 48. So again, this is why so much of what the Airmen's Association that does what we do is all behind the scenes that you never hear about, that you don't know what's going on when we go off and do all these things. And it's hard for us to quantify this stuff and to put these things out there so you know what we're doing. And to be fair and to be honest, some of this stuff we really shouldn't talk about in public because the relationship we have with the folks within the FAA and within DOT, we want to be a resource for them. We want to be an asset for them to be able to do their job better. And sometimes that means conversations that are off the record. Sometimes that means somebody calling and saying, hey, I need to run something past you. Or that means me calling somebody and saying, help me understand better what this criteria and this regulation really means in practice. And so if I were to go around and talk about all of those conversations all the time, you can imagine that sometimes folks wouldn't want to have a conversation with me because they know I'm going to talk about it on YouTube. So again, the value of your membership with the Airmen's Association, and that's kind of what this update's kind of turned into, and that wasn't really my goal and my intention, but you need to understand that so much of what we do at the Alaska Airmen's Association, it's very hard to put into a newsletter. It's very hard to put into the transponder. It's very difficult to figure out a way to tell you what we've done to help you when we send out an email or we put a social media post out there. But rest assured, we are behind the scenes doing an awful lot of things. Now, there is something that you can do that's out in the open and it's not behind the scenes, it's not behind some curtain. There is a survey out there right now about the Denali area aviation system plan. And this is primarily for the Denali Borough, but it encompasses parts of Denali National Park, the highway corridor, the Parks Highway from Talkeetna towards the Fairbanks area. And DOT needs some information from you about what you think needs to be in this part of the state when it comes to aviation infrastructure. We put some postings on our social media outlets about how you can go take that survey. We've sent out a newsletter to our membership about that survey. That survey closes the end of this month. It closes on August 31st. And I apologize, the rain has started to fall again, and being here inside the hangar, it gets kind of loud, so I'm gonna wrap this up before it gets too loud for you to even hear me. But go to our website, go to our social media channels, and find out how you can participate in that survey to give your opinion and your information about what you think needs to be done there. So I'm going to wrap it up because it's going to get really loud here in the hangar in just a minute with this rain that has just started. But thank you for your participation. Thank you for your membership. If you're not a member, I encourage you to consider becoming a member and adding your voice to the other 2,000 plus people when it comes to advocating for general aviation in Alaska. My name's Adam White, and I'll see you again next month.